27th, it looks like, I think. Yeah, well, it's later than I thought. We are working on the prototype. Is it really October 27th? Hold on a second. Let me check this out, because for some reason, my mind is telling me it's not the 27th. No way, it really is. How about that? Okay, it's later than we thought. October 27th, working on the prototype program. You know, it's actually super unbelievably exciting, but at the same time, it's unbelievably stressful because there's so much that we're working on, and I'm so happy to have computers and robots to help me with this because, you know, otherwise it would take me like 20 years to make something like this that I'm making. But yeah, so here's where the printer, he's doing pretty good. He's making a pretty cool block piece right now for us. That's about where he's at, about 22%. Show you what the whole piece will be when it's done. So that's the entire piece. That's one small segment of the entire pod pack. But yeah, we ran into a little snag with the 3D printer. The filament had shot all over the place, and we had to take everything apart, gut it out, clean it real good. Even after cleaning it, we realized that it wasn't even going to work because we fired it back up and tried to keep the original parts going and printed, and it just was failure after failure after failure. This was the original hot end, and you can see in there's plastic that I got welded to the filament, and the plastic kept seeping down and kind of messing up the print jobs. So luckily we had a spare that came with the printer, so we were able to tear everything apart and replace it with the new one that's in there now. But we need to definitely buy more of these off of Amazon just to have them on hand. We also determined a bunch of other parts that are good to have on hand, some extra fans, some small gauge wire and other things. So yeah, it was a good learning lesson. Definitely, it took us 2 days to get it all back together and get it fixed. But it was also a really good test of, like, you know, can we manage this and kind of troubleshoot errors and figure out what's going on, if it's the file, if it's the printer, or if it's both. In this case, it actually turned out to be both. The file had some issues on the design end because the printer was just listening to whatever, you know, I told it to do. But on the other end, we're also having failures because of the one failure that was based on the file caused another failure for the printer. So once we're able to reverse engineer all that and get it all cleaned up, it worked out pretty good. So we're working on wheels, siding. You know, it's pretty cool stuff. You know, a lot of times I really do feel like, you know, Tony Stark's working on an Iron Man suit, which is coming, by the way, just as a side note, working on that. But starting with the pod pack. Maybe a little surprise for everybody later. But yeah, working on the wheelbase and engineering for all that. No idea what I'm doing with that wheelbase. I'm trying to come up with a suspension system that's on a micro scale built into the luggage base that allows the luggage to take, you know, rougher environments and stairs and stuff better. And I've seen what's out there. You know, there's a lot of different versions of this that already exist. The only thing is, every time I watch one of those videos that reviews or looks at that suspension system, it just doesn't look right. I don't know how to describe it, but it just doesn't look good. Like when you look at a really good suspension on a car and you watch it perform under testing, not only does it look good from an aesthetic point of view, but it looks good during the suspension, like when it's taking the trauma. It looks correct. And then when you look at a crappy car with crappy suspension, not only does it not look good, but then you can also tell when it's in the moment and you see the suspension fail and stuff, it looks like it's not good. And everything I'm looking at with luggage either A, doesn't have suspension, or B, it just doesn't seem to be well executed at the level that's needed for a pod pack. Because pod packs can be so sophisticated in so many other categories that I'm finding it very, very important to make sure that something like suspension is really well executed on this first iteration that gets released to the public. So, it's funny. Somebody asked me the other day, what about Boeing or some of these other companies, Samsonite or other companies that are working on their luggages have been around for 100 years, and what's the difference between them and me, and furthermore, what makes me think that I can compete against them? First and foremost, I don't really feel like I'm competing in that regard. I feel like everyone has something to bring to the table, and it's very unique to that person's experiences and talents and skills that they've developed. And so, somebody else trying to compete with that is probably going to fail, because you would have to have almost essentially identical experiences to be able to mimic what they're doing. So I think this is just at the end of the day, my take on what luggage should be, could be, and will be. And I think there's other people out there that are going to have their take, and it is what it is. It's just the nature of having different options and different products out there to choose from. Secondly, I also think that the larger companies, since they've been around for so long, I think it is difficult for them to innovate and change. A lot of times it's very easy for companies to get complacent and settled in. It actually does cost them a lot more money to figure this stuff out, because the truth is you got to pay, all these different salaries and hourlies and overtime and, R&D budgets and all this stuff. It's very, very complicated. The only reason I know is because I've been on that end working for corporations and seen how difficult it is to take a simple idea that might be better and explore it to bring some validity to it and bring it to the market. A lot of times it gets axed somewhere along the way in that corporate ladder because of budget cuts, or there's other areas to focus on. So innovation does actually become a little bit difficult for those companies. And that's something that I want to make sure in ADHERE that we really continue to innovate and create a division that focuses purely on that. And some companies do that. Some more than others, and some put way more into it than others. They might have a division, but they don't actually put a lot of money into that R&D section. So I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of innovation hasn't happened, is because the companies that do run a lot of that territory, they haven't had a need to do it. But I do believe personally, because of the way technology has advanced in the last 20 years, with the introduction of smartphones and all these smart devices, IoT, Internet of Things technologies that have risen and really taken a foothold on people's daily uses, it's just kind of time. And I think it takes someone who believes in that, plus has a lot of experience and something deeper than wanting to make money to drive to make that change. And that's really where ADHERE comes into play. And that's really where I feel like I have some value to bring to the market, in showcasing that 25 years of constantly packing and organizing and designing things that would work for me on a daily basis as a diabetic. It really, eventually you reach a point where you've tried so many things that you surpass what the average person has tried in terms of something like organizing. And when you couple that with a formal education in design and engineering, and it really helps out, because then you can actually articulate those ideas a lot more accurately and a lot better, so that people can understand what you're trying to do eventually. So I think that's where I really feel like ADHERE can make a difference. I am looking forward to eventually hiring an awesome team to back this idea and to back some of the other ideas that ADHERE is going to produce. I do know it's going to be wildly successful. I do know that it's going to take off and change everything. There's no question in my mind. It's very obvious. The only thing that's standing between me and that takeoff, that end of runway to taking off, is essentially work, and that's what drives me every morning. Is knowing that it's just work. I just got to put in the time. I just got to put in the work, put in the failures, learning from those mistakes, getting back to it. Last couple days were a great example of that. A lot of failure, but it also came out on top, proving to myself that I could troubleshoot a 3D printer and take it apart, put it back together, figure out what's wrong with it, get the files to communicate correctly, and get back on track. That's huge, because a lot of people might run into a wall and think they need somebody else to come help them, or that they need to hire somebody, or that, go ahead and pay for separate consult and have somebody else print it. And I'm a firm believer that you can learn just about anything you want to learn. You just got to put the, that diligence into getting the material and figuring it out. Thank goodness for whoever invented the internet, because that has opened up unlimited knowledge. So I've taken the perspective that, I'll hire employees when the timing's right, because I've been on the side where you're working for somebody and you don't have good benefits, you're not treated well, you're not paid well, you're not appreciated. And I've always told myself when I started a company that I was going to make sure that the employees had unbelievable benefits that would just blow everyone's mind, and unbelievably good treatment, respectful environment, supportive of families and mothers and fathers and passions, wanting to build and encourage those people to get stronger and better and pursue their dreams, super creative environment, empowering. So, these are things that I have, and I'm willing to hold out and keep taking the heat on my end until ADHERE reaches a point where we can actually do it right, and make sure that when we bring on that first and second and third person and so on and so forth, that person really does feel unbelievably appreciated from day one, even as a startup. So that's kind of where we're at. We're just working our butt off. We're getting ready for Pi, which is exciting. That should be released in the general public here soon. Super exciting for us to be a part of that and to have that kind of support and mentorship and workshop space and office space and all the networking. I mean, it's going to be phenomenal for us. It's going to be phenomenal. But we're also wanting to make sure that we bring some value to the table when we come in there and show that we've got some great stuff already produced, and using them as an accelerant to keep propelling us forward. So a lot of exciting things happening. We'll be doing a lot of videos showing as we move into that office space, the changes we make in this one, all that great stuff. Actually, you can see we've got some Christmas lights up. It's not Christmas, it's actually right around Halloween. But really like the holidays with the lights. So yeah, we'll give you guys an update later. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning, so you're out. See you guys later.